Guinea-nomics, when a guinea pig talks to you about economics. Hi, I'm Octavia Porcellus, and today I am being forced to speak Latin. Well, just 2 words of Latin, but they are very important words, and they are called Ceteris Paribus. These Latin words mean everything else being the same. Things being the same may not sound very exciting, but keeping things the same is the best way to discover what happens when something changes, and discovering new things is very exciting. Scientists love keeping their experimental conditions the same. They go to great lengths to shield their observations from extraneous influences. They might set their lab deep underground to avoid cosmic rays, or suspend their instrument from a system of pulleys to eliminate vibrations, or even scrub off all their loose skin cells to keep their samples pristine. But if you think that sounds hard, that's nothing compared to how hard it is to keep outside influences from contaminating your study of humans. We are not allowed to suspend them from systems of pulleys for much longer than a few hours, and when we do, they tend to act unnaturally anyway, so it's not very helpful. What is helpful is doing the most we can to keep all conditions the same while we experiment with only one change at a time. And here's what happens when we don't. I like to be happy, and I know that I get really happy when my cage is cleaned and I get new toys and I get a slice of watermelon and my cage mate is in a good mood and Mercury is just being a planet like a planet does without anybody talking about retrograde. But because so many things are making me happy, I'm not entirely sure which things are making me happy or which thing is making me the happiest. It is literally impossible for me to tell. You know what I could do? I could try just changing one thing at a time, and then I would know how happy a watermelon slice makes me versus how happy a clean cage makes me. I could even try combos like a clean cage and a new willow ball, or a hammock and an orange slice. There are so many valid experiments my owner could do concerning my happiness, which I think she should totally do. And as my owner is experimenting with new things to make me happy, she should hold all other things constant, so we are sure that the extra happiness came from the change we are studying and not some random other thing we weren't even thinking about. Holding all other things constant means keeping everything else the same. Everything else being the same means ceteris paribus. As you're learning the general principles of economics, it might be tempting to think, well, that's not always true. This guinea pig does not know what she is talking about. I won't say that I know everything about economics or that I am always right, but I will say that when learning a general principle, the thing to keep in mind is that you must respect the idea of ceteris paribus. When you don't, this is how it goes. An economist says, diminishing marginal utility means that I will always enjoy the second blueberry less than the first blueberry. Somebody scratches their head and says, but what if the first blueberry was sour and the second blueberry was sweet? So the economist says, then those are not the same quality of blueberry. I meant to say that I will always enjoy the second blueberry of exactly the same quality less than the first blueberry of that same exact quality. But somebody else says, so what if the first blueberry is right after taking a big drink of juice and the second exactly the same blueberry is after you ate a cracker that dried out your mouth? And the economist says, then I am eating them under different conditions. I meant to say that they are exactly the same quality and my mouth is exactly the same amount of dry. And then some smarty pants says, yeah, well, what if you've never had a blueberry before and you were really anxious about it, but after you had one you realized you liked it, so you enjoyed the second one more? And the economist gives a big sigh and says, look, you are telling me I have more information after eating the first blueberry and that I am in a different emotional state for the second blueberry. I am talking about the same quality of blueberry under the same conditions with the same amount of information and in precisely the same emotional state. Mr. Smartypants opens his mouth again and the economist says, no, ceteris paribus. Mr. Smartypants says, you don't have to go all Latin on me. We were just having a conversation. And the economist says, no, I do not think we were. I think you were just set on proving me wrong. Other people were legitimately confused, but you are derailing the conversation for no reason. If you need me to be extra clear, I will be extra clear. Ceteris paribus. Whatever you are about to say next, make sure it does not violate the idea of ceteris paribus. And ceteris paribus means everything else stays the same. As a human living in the real world, you will notice general rules of economics seeming to be violated all the time. But it is much more likely that what you are seeing is not a violation of the general rule, but rather a special case where a more specific rule is counteracting the general rule. This happens in all the sciences. Here's a famous example of a special case in physics. We know that all objects fall at the same rate regardless of their mass. Most people find that counterintuitive because we have observed everyday occurrences that seem to violate this principle, like a feather floating gently to the ground. But the example of the feather does not violate the general rule. It is a special case. It is the case of an object falling within an atmosphere. A feather will fall more slowly than a bowling ball if you drop them both off the side of your bed, because the feather is more greatly affected by air resistance or drag. But you know what will happen in a vacuum? The bowling ball and the feather will fall at exactly the same rate. It's true. Find a video on the internet to see it for yourself. It's really freaky looking. Because we live in the real world, we are surrounded by special cases. These special cases can seem to invalidate some very well understood general principles. And for that I say, ceteris paribus. But going forward, instead of ending every sentence with ceteris paribus, I may just flash it on the screen when it seems especially important to remember. That will cut down on my having to speak Latin by about 98%, and I am all in favor of that. If you are in favor of learning about another general economic concept, check out the next video on mutually beneficial trade. It's what happens when I've got something you want, and you've got something I want, and we do a swap that leaves us both feeling happy. like when I swap you my cute animal shenanigans for your clicks and views. See you there soon. Bye!